Donald Trump is repeating his calls for a special prosecutor to investigate whether Hillary Clinton played favorites while she was Secretary of State. A new Associated Press report has revealed that most of the people from outside the U.S. government who spoke with or met with Secretary Clinton also had given money to the Clinton Foundation. But the Clinton campaign is insisting that the report is flawed. In fact, here's what Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook had to say in an interview just this morning on MSNBC.
By our count, there were over 1,700 other meetings that she had. You know, she was Secretary of State. She was meeting with foreign officials and government officials constantly. So to pull all of them out of the equation, cherry pick a very small number of meetings is pretty outrageous.
To discuss it, roll call columnist John Allen joins us from Washington to break it all down. And John, we heard things like flawed data first, and now you just heard Robbie Mook's explanation there. If nothing else, how convincing?
Well, look, you have to have a little bit of compassion for Robbie because he signed up for a presidential campaign that started long after these meetings happened, long after the Clinton Foundation raised money from those donors. But look, they know they have a problem on their hands here, a political problem, a perception problem. Appears not a legal problem since the FBI has been through all these emails, but they're doing the best they can, I think.
And I saw your tweets just this morning about this report in question. In one of them, I'm going to quote your tweet to you. You wrote, "The big question on the AP Clinton story is which of the 85 donors, again, more than half that we know of thus far that did gain access, would not have had access to any Secretary of State." End quote. It is something we've discussed here on our program this morning, the idea of access and, frankly, what it means to you with regard to the story. So what to you does it mean?
Well, look, I think there is a perception problem here. There is a concern among the public that if Hillary Clinton is elected president, that people have donated not only to the foundation but to her campaigns and have given her checks for speeches to her personal bank account would have undue influence over her. But the question of access is a different one than the question of influence. They're related. If people who would have been able to access any Secretary of State got meetings with her, that's not really a problem. You know, one of the people that was cited in that story, Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, every Secretary of State would have met with him. So we haven't seen that list of 85 people that were donors. I think the real question is, are people who are donating, who otherwise have no business with the Secretary of State, getting access to her? And of course, on the question of meetings in and of themselves, the Supreme Court has recently ruled in the case of Bob McDonnell, the former governor of Virginia, that meetings in and of themselves do not represent an illegal quid pro quo. That is to say, an exchange of getting a meeting for somebody who is a donor is not a problem. From a legal perspective, it is, of course, a problem from a perception perspective.
Indeed, though we should also note, initial State Department response did include the notion that no impact on policy had been a result of these meetings in question. If nothing else, though, John, it has been an issue that has managed to keep Donald Trump on message for at least the last 2 days or so. In a concise turn of phrase, he did say it is impossible to figure out where the Clinton Foundation ends and the State Department begins, end quote. If nothing else, what do you make of the rallying cry we're hearing from the GOP nominee?
I think this has been his best couple of days on the campaign trail. He's got a storyline against Hillary Clinton that is hitting pretty deep. You've obviously seen the Clinton Foundation react to it by saying it's going to make changes. There are editorial boards across America that say those changes aren't enough, that the Clintons basically need to detach themselves from the Clinton Foundation or wind it down entirely, or perhaps hand it off to somebody else. So Donald Trump is making a pretty good move here in terms of staying on message, in terms of turning this on the Clintons. For so many weeks, all of the news stories were about Donald Trump's problems. And Donald Trump sort of stepping on his own good messages when he had them. He is not suffering for that right now.
John, we know that following James Comey's pronouncements, it was thought by the Clinton campaign that, if nothing else, this email scandal would become background noise, I suppose, if you will. She has been holding big-ticket fundraisers, though, this week. Also this week, we have learned of 15,000 previously undisclosed emails and other documents that now need to be explained. And that came before we learned of these 85 donors and counting. And through it all, we have only seen a single appearance on one late night television program where she essentially yucked it up. Is that going to be enough?
Depends on what the polls do. I think for the longest time, it was in Hillary Clinton's interest not to do press conferences. She was leading in the polls. She's not particularly good in interviews or press conferences, much as she's not the greatest stump speaker in the world. So her better plan was to not do press conferences and just milk that lead while Donald Trump kept stepping on himself. If the polls close, if you were to see her fall behind, I think you'd see a change in the press strategy for sure.
And as you mentioned, you believe it's been the best performance by Donald Trump on the stump these last few days or so. Interestingly, they have come even as he has stepped away from what was arguably the cornerstone of his entire campaign, his very hardline stance regarding immigration. To that end, we've now learned that far-right British politician Nigel Farage is going to be sharing the stump tonight with the GOP nominee in Mississippi, of course, the hardliner who was at the forefront and the real push behind the Brexit movement. What do you make of those optics?
Well, it's like he's speaking loudly and carrying a smaller stick on immigration this week in terms of hinting at policy changes while he goes out and says things that are equally aggressive on immigration to the things he said before, going around campaigning with Nigel Farage, who's essentially a protectionist in Britain and has danced the line of basically saying he doesn't want Muslim immigrants into Britain. So, I think that this is a situation where Donald Trump is still trying to put together and pull together a Republican coalition. Look, there are a lot of evangelical Christian voters, certainly Democrats among evangelical Christians, and a lot of Republicans among evangelical Christians who believe that mass deportation of immigrants is cruel and inhuman and against their values. And that's a problem for Donald Trump just in getting Republicans to want to vote for him. So you're seeing that softening, or at least a hint at a softening on the policy on mass deportation. But again, that's not going to get him to where he needs to build a coalition that is larger than the Republican Party, because the rest of his policy is not appealing to independents and Democrats, or at least middle-of-the-road independents and Democrats.
Certainly a hint, if nothing else, at the awareness of the calculus of this issue, or really for Donald Trump, a Wednesday. Roll calls, John Allen, as always. Appreciate the time, my friend.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.